Hi, this is Rose Spicer. I run retail marketing here at Oracle. We're absolutely thrilled to have everyone join us today. We're going to be walking through the latest retail portfolio and update. I'm excited to have Mike Webster, Jeff Warren, and Anthony Wildy here with us. We will run about an hour long for the webcast. You have the ability to put questions into the Q&A as we move along. This will be recorded, so you're welcome to share this with your colleagues after the webcast runs. If you have any technical difficulties, you can also put that into the Q&A or into the chat, and my team and I will be here to help. With that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Mike.
Good. Thank you, Rose. Well, welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year to you. I think, like everyone, we were just so eager to watch the calendar flip with the promise of, advancements in science to treat this horrible pandemic, and just a fresh start. And quickly that reality has been met with a new variant, a range of shutdowns from Tokyo to London and beyond, and some saddening developments in other parts of the world that obviously concern us. So, we appreciate that today there are many much more important things happening in the world, and we're just very appreciative that you're going to invest a little bit of time with us, really to get calibrated around what we think is ahead in global retail. I'd say we have a balanced optimism about what's ahead for us. And in any time where we have great uncertainty, the approach we typically take is to try to get into research mode. And so, kind of the foundation of our strategy has always been listening to you, right? Really trying to understand what you as our customers and our partners need. And then we always try to add additional research that gives us a deeper lens from a consumer standpoint. We released that back, at the end of last year. I think the surveys were all concluded in October. We really tried to look at, where consumers are in the 10 largest retail markets that we serve. And we got some fantastic insights from that survey. They're all published out on Oracle. You can access that and download them. But really, I think that informs the key themes that we hear from every single retailer. So while they're focused on making sure that the key priorities in a pandemic, let's make sure we buy, let's make sure we move, let's make sure we sell inventory to serve customers, is executing with its highest efficiency. I think the best minds in retail right now are trying to look around the corner a bit and try to anticipate what's happening. And so the theme we heard most predominant as we go forward is a need for innovation. And today, I hope what you're going to hear from us is that speed of innovation is something that is happening at a pace that we've never seen before. And it is something that we think we have a role to play in enabling with and for you. So much of what I think you'll hear from Jeff and Anthony and I today is that, while we focus every single day on the basics of how we support you and how we help you service your customers, we also have to keep an eye, in front and better understand how can we help innovate with and for you, again, with the goal of, improving performance and driving better business outcomes. What you'll hear from Jeff, and he's really going to take us through the bulk of the next section, is that when we kind of summarize the key themes we hear from every single customer around the world, regardless of what sub-vertical you're in, regardless of what tier of retail you operate, is the following. There is a significant need to bring agility because the pace of change is accelerating, not slowing. And your ability to react and anticipate where your consumer is, what competition is up to, what regulations or health events can happen, demands agility like never before. The second key theme you're going to hear from us is that this is an opportunity to pivot to customer. This is the moment where we can get closer to customer, better understand their needs, personalize and tailor their experience, and try to submit offers to them that anticipate what their next move might be. And finally, it's about how do you focus on your core? How do you move those things that are context to your organization and get to a place where you can open up capacity and create space for innovation? Those are the journeys that we think summarize best where the retail community is at. And we are, again, humbled to be a part of that. We appreciate you spending the next hour with us. And we hope to get to the end in a conversation in Q&A. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and let him kind of guide us through the next step. So Jeff, thanks.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. And thank you all. It's a pleasure to join you. For those of you who know me, you know what an extrovert I am and how much I enjoy presentation and generally enjoy the opportunity to get together with our community, our customers, our partners, our friends and associates in New York for NRF. Obviously, this year is a bit different. But we're looking forward and in no way dampened on our enthusiasm for what we think we can accomplish together. So with that, Anthony, let's go ahead and kind of take a look back on what was really the impact of this journey together as about the agility required within the retail industry and the challenge that the retail industry has been facing over the past few years. So next slide, please. So as we think about the challenges that are brought to us from the retail community that we serve, to really kind of sum up those challenges at a global level, how do retailers and how do our customers choreograph and create consistent physical and digital retail experiences that are consistent with their brand? How do they keep pace with the incredible change in consumer demand in terms of how she likes to shop? How do they respond to the digital disruption and the impact that a smartphone has in the hands of a consumer that allows her to be able to shop anytime, any place, anywhere, and with anyone? Ultimately, as we look at kind of the confluence of all of those challenges for us and for our industry, it really created an inflection point for the industry as the industry needed to be able to respond and be and increase the agility and the speed in which we responded to change. So next slide. So as we started down that journey, ultimately it was customers and it was our community that helped really shape and inform that. So we've told the story of partnering and working with Gap on a number of occasions, but I think it's very relevant for us to come back and revisit that story as the beginning. Ultimately, as you see the quote here from Sally, the challenge that Gap was facing is the challenge that the community was facing. So, responding to the evolving needs of global customers, the need to simplify and scale operations, ultimately the ability to adapt and respond quickly to potential divestitures or potential changes in business models. And what that's then created as an opportunity was for Gap to look at some long-standing business practices and processes and try to create pathways and to create a blueprint to be able to move those processes from on-premise kind of siloed-based applications to cloud-based solutions, software as a service-based solutions that ultimately allowed them to be able to be much more agile and much more nimble. What that's resulted is that a number of brands across the Gap portfolio, so whether it be Intermix, whether it be Banana Republic, Old Navy, Gap in North America, Gap in Japan, those brands have now moved to their core operations that are being driven by processes and services running on the Oracle Retail Cloud. And so if we move to the next slide. Gap is but one example of Oracle's response to helping the community through that change. And if we think about the challenges that we've seen and that we really kind of went and tackled in the first phase of this journey together, it was about moving visibility to inventory from siloed and discrete systems in an on-premise environment into the cloud, and then giving that single view of inventory visibility across more than just the application that it served. It was about getting to a single view of customer, getting to a single view of order, getting to a single view of price, and ultimately and bringing all of that information again from the disparate on-premise silos in which they sat into cloud-based services that could then be leveraged across the retail landscape. And as we look at the progress that's been made in terms of building that blueprint for agility, I think it's healthy for us to look back and reflect what we've accomplished over the last 5 or 6 years. So from the point where we started, with obviously down that journey with Gap to the point where we're at today, we have over 900 environments in production and under management across 18 different data centers on 3 different continents today. We're managing over 6 petabytes of data from a retail standpoint today. And now, obviously, the big numbers, but what does that actually mean, and what does that translate to in terms of the impact that it has for our customers? Well, that's 150 million US consumers in the Oracle Cloud today. It is 500 million consumer transactions flowing through the Oracle Retail Cloud today. It is 75% of the UK brand sales in grocery and of US brand sales in our cloud today. It is 80% of the grocery supply chain logging on and using our systems every week with 10,000 average daily users in the Oracle Retail Cloud today. So ultimately, as we think about the scale that we've accomplished and that we've gotten to in service of our industry and in service of you, our customers, this is not something that obviously Oracle could have done on its own. This was certainly and most definitely a partnership between our community, our partners, our customers, and our people, and something that we're incredibly proud and humbled by, and is an incredibly strong foundation now for us to build upon as we look forward to what's to come in the next 5 years. Next slide. So as we think about the challenge of getting more agile and ultimately responding to the ever hastening pace of retail, we were thrown just a massive curveball, to use a U.S. expression, on just the challenge that the retail community faced in 2020. So ultimately, as we think about our challenge in pivoting to customer, getting closer to customer, and then dealing with the challenges that we're facing today, as we move to the next slide, ultimately what that meant for retailers were, how do we adjust our operations to safely respond to those the consumer expectations? How do we deal with adequately addressing consumer demand and customer demand when we have a high variability in our supply chain, and in many cases disruption to the supply chain? How do we actually drive better customer engagement in the middle of a pandemic and try and improve our net promoter score as we think about creating these authentic engagements with our customers? So this was the next set of challenges that you as the community brought to us and said, Oracle, we need your help, we need your assistance, and we need your investment and partnership to be able to address challenges like this that we're facing within the community. So one example of that is our customer, Sally Beauty. So Sally Beauty had been in the midst of a digital transformation. As you can see, from the quote here, rolling out new point of sale, capabilities, across the, there are more than, I think, 1,200 store estate. So, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and we think about the challenge that created, and then ultimately, with stores being closed. So the response, and the request was, how do we obviously respond quickly? So in the case of Sally Beauty, Sally actually turned on some capabilities within the point of sale platform that allowed them to be able to take customer orders, directly fulfill them within the store, and on average in less than 20 minutes. And then be able to actually, create an engagement between their associate and their customers, without their customers ever having to come into the physical location. So this was obviously something that was incredibly successful and impactful to Sally, in that there were 30,000 new customers that were created in the first few weeks of rolling out this program. And it allowed them to be able to continue to leverage and use the store estate, and really kind of switch from an active mode of selling within their physical estate to really quickly moving into kind of a dark mode of allowing to be able to use that inventory and fulfill consumer demand. So again, just a great example of being able to quickly pivot and adjust and take advantage of capabilities within the platform that they had no plans of initially leveraging, but that they were able to kind of quickly pivot and respond to change in conditions. Next slide. So another great story. So Giant Eagle, a relatively new customer and partner with Oracle Retail, someone that we're extremely excited to be working with, brought a challenge to us on aligning ultimately how they plan and look to run their business with ultimately how the merchants, and the operations ultimately execute down to a store level. It's obviously no secret the challenge that the pandemic has brought to grocers on a global level, and the variability in demand, the challenges with pantry loading, and the impact to the supply chain, and not always being able to acquire certain goods, and through this pandemic, like Giant Eagle and others that we've been working with have really come to Oracle to say, we need your help to understand how we can look to offset some increased costs in supply chain and our need in some cases to stockpile inventory, while adjusting service levels in other categories and for other products to be able to offset those costs and still create and provide great service for our customers as we navigate, just candidly, the different phases and the different challenges and the different disruption that's been associated with the pandemic. So again, another great story about, a retailer looking to quickly respond and ultimately modernize how they think about the challenge of going forward and serving their community. And finally, Rogers. So again, this is I think a really interesting story in that, Rogers being a longtime customer of Oracle Retail and a longtime partner looking to modernize their systems, we're thinking about a point of sale transformation, and again, then the pandemic hit. And so while there still is the need to modernize, there's the immediate challenge of how do we actually bring and serve our customers, and bring and ultimately bring the experience and bring the capabilities and the accessibility of in-store inventory to our customers on a local level. So Rogers implemented a program called Rogers Express Pickup, and took advantage of Oracle Retail Cloud capabilities to be able to broker the orders make those available to the store associate to pick, and ultimately then to be able to create the experience of allowing and delivering that inventory through a curbside pickup experience. So again, something that was from concept to rollout was done in a matter of weeks. Next slide. So as we think about our challenge and our responsibility in terms of how we're working with the community to be able to support your needs, to be able to get closer to customers, is first and foremost, as we look back on this year, was ultimately our COVID response. So from an Oracle standpoint, we created content for our community for them to be able to read and understand how they could how they could adjust and respond, taking advantage of capabilities that they might not even be aware of that were part of their platform. We created forums to bring our customers together to connect and to share best practices. It was there were a number of wonderful events where our customer advisory boards, our user groups got together, and we saw customers, gladly sharing best practices as they went through the first wave of COVID in Europe and responding and thinking about how to protect their stores, how to protect their associates, sharing that information with US-based customers, with customers from Latin America, to help prepare them for what was coming. Certainly, from an engagement standpoint, we created offers. Having the cloud and having our software as a service environment was incredibly impactful in order to be able to respond in the examples like that I've given, like Rogers and other customers. But just even the ability to be able to dynamically scale and deal with the change to the challenge within the business. So, for example, we had one customer that was running on our merchandising cloud service that was averaging about 50,000 orders a month prior to the pandemic. That number went from 50,000 to 2.4 million over the course of 2 months. And so if you think about the change and the impact and the scale of just that dynamic change that quickly, and needing to be able to have the elasticity and the ability to be able to respond that quickly, doing so in the cloud, doing so as a service, was something, without them having to throw more bodies and more people and more resources at it, was something that I think is a great example of the power of cloud computing and the power of running these processes as a service. Certainly, as we got into the pandemic, the need for innovation that Mike referenced was never more apparent. The need for us to think about how we better leveraged science, how we better leveraged artificial intelligence and machine learning, how we better data, and bringing together data from disparate sources in order to be able to produce better business outcomes became more and more apparent. And so we launched a number of offers over the course of the last 12 months around moving from kind of the basics of price and markdown optimization into offer optimization. So the idea and the understanding that price and promotion are not independent; they are related, activities, and they have a corresponding impact on one another. And the idea that we can use that information and we can use visibility across the enterprise to understand what is actually the best offer to make our customer, whether it's a markdown of price or it's actually a promotional offer. I referenced the need to be able to optimize inventory. Never more so than in a pandemic. In the understanding of, in some cases we had grocers that where inventory was flying off the shelves, and in other cases we had obviously apparel retailers and other segments of retail where their stores were being closed, and the understanding and being able to leverage essentially artificial intelligence to be able to look across your entire estate, your entire product portfolio, down to individual items where people just can't deal with that level of information in order to be able to make recommendations. So taking those concepts, taking those problems, ultimately putting and pointing our science platform at those problems to be able to start to address and start to embed and extend the capabilities that people need as part of their daily jobs, to be able to leverage AI and ML to solve real world and tangible and concrete problems, really became the mission and became ever more present in our strategy. And finally, the third phase of this was as we really kind of took that lens and took that view upon our portfolio, we realized we had to kind of transcend and we had to move into the next phase, which is moving from the first phase of the cloud, of moving discrete applications and processes from on-premise into the cloud. We needed to move from an application-centric viewpoint to a platform-centric viewpoint. So in order to do that, we had to think more holistically about just even the portfolio within the Retail Global Business Unit, but we had to think about broader views of data. So a year ago, we announced a partnership with the Oracle Data Cloud, where now not only do we have access within our cloud environment to obviously the 150 consumers that are already part of our cloud environment and those 5.5 billion transactions, but we also have access to the entire US consumer view of the Oracle Data Cloud and the ability to bring in large aspects of unstructured data. So whether it be CVC reports, whether it be COVID updates on a county by county basis, whether it be weather information, whether it be social information, the ability to bring all of that information together as part of our platform to be able to inform and impact the processes that we run as part of retail. So those were all really key key aspects of what I would call the second phase of Oracle's life cycle in our cloud journey. So now we move on to 2021, and as Mike mentioned, I think the hope for all of us as we turn the page from 2020 into 2021 was that a lot of the challenge that we faced in 2020 was behind us. But the reality that I think that we're all seeing is that the challenge is still out in front of us. And so as we think about what that challenge looks like and some of the conversations that we've had with our customers, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with one of our large North American-based customers, where they made the comment, "Look, Jeff, we still have to hit a sales plan. So even though some of our stores are going to be closed, even though our supply chain is going to be disrupted, I still have to hit a sales plan. I still need to protect margins while driving sales. We still need to create authentic engagements between our associates and the customers in which they serve. And the challenge is I need to do all of this, when we're living in an age of disruption, whether that is political disruption, whether it's social disruption, whether it's disruption as a result of the pandemic. The reality of our business and the reality of our industry is we have to accomplish the first two while living with the third. And that creates enormous pressure on our industry, on the personas, on the roles, and the people within our organization, as we're asked to do more with less, as we're asked to do it faster, as we're asked to do and deal with more information. So one of the, next slide, please. So one of the examples that I wanted to give you on a customer of ours that is tackling that challenge head on is our customer Nadi Medical in Saudi Arabia. So for those of you who don't know Nadi has they are the largest pharmacy chain in Saudi Arabia. They're also in UAE. They've been a long-standing customer in privilege to work with them over the years. They brought a number of unique challenges to us this past year. So obviously, as a provider of PPE for the Saudi Kingdom, one of the challenges was, how do we forecast and understand what the demand is going to be when we have not only the challenge of the pandemic, but we have crashing oil prices, we have changes to the taxes in local countries, we have the challenge of whether or not visitors are going to be allowed to participate in the Hajj and come to Mecca. So we need to be able to leverage AI and ML to be able to better predict demand and use that as another input and as guidance for how we respond to the change. They also brought another challenge to us of how do we create more authentic engagements between our pharmacists and our customers, and how can we use AI and ML to better serve them? And over the course of about 6 or 7 weeks, we were able to partner with their data science team and jointly develop an extension to capabilities that they'd already rolled out with us in our cloud platform that allows their pharmacists to see information from their customers after their customers have identified themselves to their pharmacist about past purchases, information about churn, information about recommended next purchase and how they can better serve them, notes in terms of previous interactions. So ultimately, what Nadi is doing is they're combining different disparate data sources with AI and ML, putting that in the hands of their associates to be able to create more authentic and better engagements and a better way for their pharmacists to be able to serve their customers. Again, I think this is a great representative example of how we think about science and how we think about transcending from individual applications to a platform to be able to create innovation in the middle of a pandemic, to be able to do it with speed and to be able to then do it with scale. Next slide. And ultimately, the challenge for all of us as we think about, creating that space for innovation is fundamentally, at the end of the day, our business is about driving outcomes. How do we plan better and more compelling assortments? How do we better predict demand with precision? How do we place our inventory with the right price and the right purpose? And how do we drive seamless execution to enable the consumer and customer journeys that we're ultimately looking to provide? And so what I'd like to ask is, Anthony is going to bring up a few examples and a few demonstrations of how we've done that with some customers over the past 12 months. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Anthony to give you some examples on not what is the future, but what is the art of the possible today. Anthony?
Thanks very much, Jeff. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to spend about 10 minutes going through a couple of examples here. Really, they're examples of how we've helped retailers innovate and, as Jeff said, drive better business outcomes. So this example is based on a real customer that we've been working with in the US. They're a large drinks retailer, a liquor retailer. We've anonymized the name, but we wanted to show you some of the customer journeys that we've been helping them with. We're going to look at a couple of areas. We're going to touch on a concept we call exact inventory. So really trying to understand exactly where inventory sits, what we've got, how we sell it through. It's really critical to the customer experience. We're going to touch on some pieces of omnichannel execution. We're going to look at some of the new journeys that we've developed really quickly, things like curbside pickup as a response to the COVID pandemic. We're going to look at how machine learning and artificial intelligence through our science platform is speeding those journeys up and improving the business outcomes. And we're also going to look about how mobility is helping store associates deal with the pandemic and adjusting to those new journeys. So we're going to look at a day in the life of a store associate who works for our fictional retailer in this case. Our associate here is called Ash. She has a number of roles within the store. She's in charge of the customer order fulfillment side of things. She's seeing a lot more activity at the moment as this retailer has adapted really well to the pandemic and be able to flex their stores between dark stores and open stores. So using them as dark fulfillment centers or micro fulfillment centers when they've been closed due to COVID issues. She's also responsible for the customer service side, for inventory operations, things like stock counts and in-store replenishment, as well as actually selling to her customers. She's really keen to still offer a really good level of customer service, even during the pandemic, when she knows that contact is much more limited, of course. So let's have a look at some of the activities that she undertakes. So first thing in the morning here, she's able to undertake customer pickups, customer orders that she needs to go and pick. She's seeing a lot more of these through the pandemic as people have moved, really a tsunami of digital traffic, which is now hitting her store and she's able to fulfill. So she's able to go in on her mobile device, start to look at the customer orders that have come in overnight. She's able to go in, inspect the order, start to see what she needs to go and pick, go and create a pick against this order. She gets recommendations from the system, exactly the inventory that we hold around this and where that inventory is located within the store, as it may be in multiple places. She's able to go through, find that particular customer's order that is required, the item, get that recommendation around where it is, and then actually scan the item to create the pick and finalize that order. That finalization process then notifies the customer immediately that that order is available for pickup from that store. We'll now move through and see the customer side here. So now that Ash has finished that particular pick process and notified the customer, let's meet Ron. He's our customer. He's been delighted with the service that he's been getting from retail.com, even during the pandemic. He's been pleased that the assortments that they have are always available. The items that he likes are always available from them. Even if he's not able to go into a store, he's still able to go and pick up the particular orders from them. He also really likes doing things like curbside pickup. So he finds that a really safe way to continue to get the items that he wants. So he's been notified both on his watch and on his phone that this order is now available for him to pick up. So he drives over to the store, he goes into the curbside pickup area of retail.com. As he gets there, he can use his phone once he's turned his car off, of course. He can see his status on the retail.com, the store's loyalty system. He can see that he's got some rewards within there. We've also used GPS here to say, are you now here for the curbside pickup? You can use the voice assistant to say that you're available and that you've parked in bay 3. So he clicks on his phone, uses the voice control, and we transfer that information over to the store so they know where he's parked and that he's available. So we go back to Ash. She sees that notification on her mobile device. Her customer's here. So she makes sure that that order is all ready for her customer. She picks it up, finalizes the order, and is ready now to complete that order. However, as I said, she's still really keen on having a very engaged conversation with her customers. She likes to be able to understand the customer in more detail. She wants to be able to continue that relationship, even with a curbside pickup. She wants to be able to offer a recommendation to the customer, see if there's any offers available to them. So she goes into her tablet device this time, which is showing a couple of different device form factors that we could use. She's using the device here to do a lookup of the customer. She can take a look at things like his purchase history, what he's been looking at for, things that may be in his wish list. And she's also able to see some recommendations that have been generated by the system based on his purchase history, things that he likes and the purchases that he's made. So we've got a recommendation for a bottle of wine here that the system thinks that he would like. She thinks that this would be really good, takes it out to the car with the mobile device, shows him that extra offer that's available along with the item that he's picked up, and is able to complete that transaction in a single process, just using that single device, and also do it safely as well. We do a contactless payment, we have a digital receipt going across, and she's able to really upsell to that customer as well as deliver on that item that he ordered for pickup. So he's really happy about that, gets his item and is able to safely drive off. So a number of things happened underneath the scenes there. So step through that back again. We saw the customer order being processed. Ash was able to use the mobile device to very quickly do that. She's able to scale that process using that device as well with that huge increase in digital orders that she's seen. Our exact inventory positions allowed her to fulfill that and make sure that we really do service the demand from the customer, that we deliver on our brand promise. Those operations also allow us to keep inventory exact in the store, really do those store operations that allow us to do those things. We then saw the customer journey take place, and throughout here, we're embedding science to make these decisions better and to speed up and create more agility in the system as well. So we saw the recommendation that the customer was made in that place. We also saw a complete mobile interaction with the customers. There was nothing requiring a fixed device in that entire process. It could all have happened on one form factor of device as well. We just thought we'd show you a couple of examples using different form factors here. So you saw that mobile interaction, the curbside interaction, and the recommendation. And then finally, you saw the contactless payment take place. So really nice key customer journey that we've delivered to multiple retailers this year to allow them to do things like the curbside pickup and adapt to the pandemic. Second one I wanted to show you, same retailer, but now we're moving into the role of an inventory analyst at HQ. So let's go in and meet John. He's our inventory analyst. His role is really to ensure availability of the assortment that's been delivered to each of our stores and across our digital proposition. He needs to maximize the inventory utilization, make sure that he's managing the inventory, and he's been particularly busy this year. He's had all sorts of problems to deal with around COVID. He's had to adapt the stores that are closed, move inventory between them, make sure that we can use some of the stores as micro fulfillment centers or for curbside pickup only, even when they're shut down. So he's been able to use our platform in a similar way. So he has access to the retail home screen here. This is really the starting place for his day. He's got access to all of the metrics that he's measured on and that help him do his job really well. Not only can he see these metrics within here, he's able to also go and access business processes and execute against those business processes from this single set of screens. And also, he's got a set of machine learning recommendations that are delivered to him down at the bottom of here. So recommendations that are coming through the system around how he should execute his role. So if I go in and click on one of those, we'll look at a particular example here. So one of the things we've often seen this year is a localized COVID restriction from a local government organization. So it may be that stores have had to close from their full operations and reduce their operations being just dark store fulfillment centers, or maybe only doing click and collect pickup, as is happening in the UK at the moment. What John's done here with the system is take a recommendation around how he should move inventory between his locations based on that shutdown. So you've got a number of stores that are going to have to move into that dark kind of format, as well as a number of stores that are fully trading. So he's used the system here to get a recommendation on the types of transfer of inventory he should do to really optimize the inventory that he's holding. So he's getting a recommendation here of a potential increase in $56,000 of sales for a cost of about $2,000 of moving stock from a store that is likely to be closing down into those stores that we're doing. He's effectively done a rebalance within the system here, fully automatically as a recommendation. You can go through, see the details associated with this, and get a really clear visualization of what the system's been recommending. So here we can see the Soho store is the one that's going to need to reduce its operations. Based on that, he's going to move inventory into other stores that are still available, and he's going to reduce the assortment in that store as well. So we see a suggestion of a transfer down into the Lenox store, which happens to be the one that Ash works at. So he may want to go in and inspect this visualization of the workflow and approve it. He may set this to be an auto approved and just let the AI ML system make those recommendations and executions for him. So he approves those transfers to take place. We'll go back down to our store level here. Here, the Lenox store that is reducing its operations due to that COVID shutdown executes the transfer request that's been automatically sent through the system, again using a mobile device to go and do that process, and puts all of the items, multiple items, into a single container. We then go back to Ash. So she's now at the Lenox store. She's receiving those items. So the system knows that those items are available. She goes into the receiving screens, sees the container ID. She's able to scan that container and check all of that inventory that's contained within that container straight into the inventory in her store. So really quick execution of that optimized inventory transfer that the system's generated and recommended. So if I go back quickly to the flow here, what you saw was that home screen that John has. So Retail Home gives him all of that information and those key recommendations. Really, at his finger point, he's able to see exactly what's going on in real time in the system. He then looks at that inventory rebalancing recommendation due to that COVID shutdown that he had. He sees the system's recommendations. You can see the visualization of that and the workflow associated with it. He approves it, sends that through into execution at the store that is exiting that inventory. And then you saw the receipt of the inventory at the Lennox store where we're receiving that inventory. So a couple of really quick ways of using the science platform, using the AI and ML capabilities that we have to improve the business outcomes, but to do this at scale and to do this with real agility as we're moving through. So with that, Jeff, I will hand it back to you.
All right, thank you, Anthony. And so as we look forward in 2021, so what can you expect from Oracle Retail? So as we continue to transition from an application view and a single view of entities to a platform and a holistic view, ultimately what you can expect is that we will be bringing more of these processes together. We'll be providing the ability to move data real time across these processes. We'll provide a complete and holistic view to this data across these processes. Ultimately, then the benefit to that is that allows us to then embed pervasive AI and ML across the entire portfolio. And the important thing, and I think the important distinction here is not only is that embedded with the processes that we described, but it's also extensible. So the same platform can be used by scientists. The same can be used to innovate and extend across the processes that we've described in the example that I gave with Nadi Medical. The process can be used, and the same platform can be used to bring in other data, whether it be code data, social data, weather data, to be able to then bring, to be able to leverage and ultimately create and deliver innovation to your business. So the third, I think, major innovation for us, and this is really an important one, is we've talked about pivoting to customer. We've talked about pivoting to customer now for a couple of years. Well, in order to pivot to customer, we actually had to bring customer as part of core to our data model. And we had to make customer information visible across a number of processes that had historically not been cognizant of customers. So bringing customer to the core of our merchandising model, bringing customer information to be core to how we think about creating plans. So ultimately, if you think about what that can do for you, is now we can actually start to use customer information to actually create a better assortment to begin with. So we understand that 5% of your assortment is driving 45% of your markdowns. But what we also understand is that none of your best customers in a specific customer segment are buying from that assortment, and we need to actually change our strategy. We can connect the ability to be able to drive outcomes around going after and increasing growth and market share in specific segments to how you build the assortment. We can connect those goals with how you actually then start to price and how you start to place your inventory as we think about the impact to pricing and as we think about the impact ultimately to assortment and replenishment strategies. So you can't do these things without being cognizant of customer. You can't do these things without having customer at the core of your merchandising processes, at your pricing processes, at your assortment, at your replenishment, and as part of your fulfillment strategies. So all of those concepts having visibility to customer, all of those concepts having visibility to order are incredibly important as we make a transition from an application-based strategy into a platform-based strategy. Next slide. And so what does that look like? So as Anthony referenced, what that starts with is giving you a common platform in order to be able to visualize and to be able to work and to be able to create. That platform has to have dashboards. It has to be exception driven, because we just can't deal with the volume of data. It has to support the workflow. It has to allow you to visualize and be able to interact with the data. That platform has to have all of the processes that are germane and important to you within retail, whether it's creating assortment, whether it's setting initial price, whether it's managing through retail price, your retail price points, your markdowns, how you build and deliver assortments, your replenishment strategy, your fulfillment strategy, how you engage with customers. All of those processes have to be connected and orchestrated as we think across the entire retail landscape. It has to have a data model that's complete, as I referenced, and no data model can be complete in retail going forward without the inclusion of customer. It has to have embedded analytics. It has to have embedded science capabilities. We have to be able to support and dynamically create and extend via integration and be able to get data in and out. And we have to be able to orchestrate within this platform and outside of this platform. And so what you'll see is over the course of this year is that we will be delivering our next generation set of cloud services where we bring the attributes of this platform to bear. And ultimately, those attributes will then allow us to deliver the better outcomes, ultimately, that our community is asking and demanding. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. And let's go ahead and Rose, let's open it up for Q&A, and I would invite Mike and Anthony to join me, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that our community might have.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. Nice job. Let's start out. There were a few questions that came in through the Q&A. One of the first questions was talking about the speed of the implementation. Mike, I'll ask you to comment on this first. How do you think that the customers were able to move that quickly? What were some of the changes in the implementation approach? And then obviously some of the solutions that they were implementing. Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so I think when we think about how do you accelerate implementations, there are two dimensions to that. The first is, moving to a standard software as a service offer, immediately brings benefit. It avoids a lot of the customizations and integrations that would happen with a traditional on-premise implementation. But I'll tell you, we've spent a lot of energy to improve that attribute as well. So things like the retail reference library, improving the documentation for our partners that avoids unnecessary customizations, also drove improvements in implementation speed for premise customers. I think speed to us is a reflection of, we want to take all the best ideas from the community. We want to prioritize those in a structured R&D methodology that then delivers it as a service. Okay, when you do that, speed is the immediate outcome, and because we use Oracle's second generation cloud infrastructure, we're able to provision and move at pace that we've never had before. So those are a couple of examples, and again, to all of these, we're happy to follow up with you individually if you've got further questions.
Beautiful, thank you. The next comes around the buy online, pick up in store. So there are two questions, and Jeff, I'm going to route this one to you. There's one comment that says they have a fairly older point of sale system, and they want to enable the buy online, pick up in store. How quickly can we mobilize the capabilities in the cloud, and does it have to be integrated with this older point of sale? Could you just talk about some of the flexibility we have with enabling that journey?
Sure. Well, we had a number of customers actually during the pandemic that were faced with that exact problem. They did not have the time to replace a point of sale system. They did not have the time to integrate to a legacy point of sale system. They needed to be able to drop a cloud service, on top of that ecosystem and do it very quickly and enable their store associates. So we did it just exactly that through an aspect of our order broker cloud service and a store connect portal. So within the store, you have the ability to be able to interact from a store associate standpoint and ultimately be able to support the consumer journey that Anthony described without actually having to go through through the point of sale integration or impact your legacy point of sale.
Great.
From a speed standpoint, I think we had a couple of customers that did it in about 6 or 7 weeks.
Okay, excellent. The next question goes to you, Anthony. It's on the day in the life, the pickup in the parking lot. How did the customer initially order the product? Was there an e-commerce solution on the front end? I know the answer, but I'll let you.
Yes, there was an e-commerce solution on the front end. So we can process an order from any digital touch point, even a call center, more traditional places. So yeah, in this case, it was an e-commerce front end that we were using. Likewise, it could have been any other channel.
Okay, great. The next question probably is for you, Mike, that talks about, and this is probably a combination of you and Jeff, so I'll let you start, Mike, and then maybe Jeff, you can comment. Are there any concerns about scalability in the cloud for high volumes?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's concerns about scalability. I think there are still, parts of the world where we want to be very careful about things like latency and the availability of infrastructure. But at this point in time, we're not seeing anything that gives us, reason for concern about scalability. And if you even go back to the quote from Sally at Gap, I think you'll see that was one of the key drivers of moving to our infrastructure because managing at scale was a challenge that they faced. And I think we have done some fantastic work there in terms of monitoring and database tuning and performance, all the things you'd expect as part of the service. So no concerns of scale at all to date.
Yeah.
Perfect. So the next question is, how much historical data is needed to have Oracle Retail in order to get outcomes for using artificial intelligence and machine learning for inventory? So Jeff, I think you're probably the best to answer that one.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of how much and at what level. So, so ideally, we love to get transaction level data into the platform. So the good news is we have the ability to be able to work at a very discrete and low, atomic level of detail in terms of the data that we pull in. Generally, you're going to want at least a year's worth of data. In most cases, for our analytic products, you're generally looking probably about 2 years back, and then and 1 year forward. To some extent. So it's there is no one specific right answer. It is always relevant and contextual to your particular business. But I think the thing that remains true, no matter who you are, is we want to work with the lowest level of data that you have, which is at the end of the day is about a specific interaction between your brand and your customer.
Great. And here's a follow-on question that I think ties nicely into this. Where does the team see the next level of customer understanding that they hope to achieve? Specifically, how sophisticated does our internal team need to be to use this dashboard to pull meaningful insight?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in on that one, Rose. So the good news is depending upon it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what level of capabilities that you have today. The benefit of partnering with Oracle Retail is we've built these dashboards to be used out of the box. We've built these dashboards to be pre-populated with our KPIs from the analytic platform. And so we in our partner ecosystem can implement them for you and can implement these KPIs according to the retail reference library and the best practices that Mike referenced in terms of bringing the power of the 1,200 retailers that run with us, on 90 some different countries, and bring that benefit to you as a customer. Now, we have some customers, obviously, that are extremely mature in their data science and those capabilities. They can also use that same platform to extend and create for themselves. So if you need us and our data science capabilities to be able to create these outcomes for you, if you need Oracle or our partner ecosystem to help implement and help you drive through the change management to manage your business by these KPIs, or whether you're at a point in maturity where you can extend and create and really differentiate on top of that. It does not matter, in that the platform is flexible enough and the ecosystem that we've created is complete enough to be able to support any of those journeys.
Okay, great. The next question, I'll turn to you, Mike. How big or small do you need to be in order to work with Oracle Retail?
I don't think we really think about the size of retailer, but I'm sure that there are some natural limitations that would make sense. I mean, we've got obviously customers that are less than $200 million in annual revenue to the largest companies on the planet. So I think it's a pretty large tent. And I think really what it gets down to is a better understanding of what specific business problem you're trying to solve. And then we'll articulate where we think we have capabilities and where we think it aligns. But I haven't seen anything in terms of a size qualifier where the complexity of how do you create great retailing experiences is dictated by, again, the revenues that you're recording top line.
Okay, great. And then I think this is probably the last question we have time for. We saw a major shift to online, obviously, this holiday season. Mike, could you comment on what you believe the role of the store is going forward, and how e-commerce solutions play into that as well, and how they work together?
Yeah, so role of store, I think, is getting redefined, and I think in a positive way. In fact, I would suggest, again, all of this pontification over death of the store is not well placed, and I hope it's not well placed, because we still rely upon physical retail to create experiences, and where we can connect on a more emotional way with the brands that we love than we can in a purely digital fashion. So I think the role of store will evolve. Clearly, we see many use cases for micro fulfillment centers. We still know that curbside or any variant thereof is the most efficient and profitable way for orders to be delivered to customer. So we think the stores will continue to add capabilities, whether it's locker, curbside. I think that they'll do a better job of curating kind of the in-store experience that we love. If you go back to the data that we surveyed with consumers in these 10 markets, about 20% of the respondents said, look, they're just going to go back to physical retailing once the world turns back on. About half of the respondents said that their behaviors have changed and they're going to continue to have a mixed experience, both physical and digital. And then we saw, the remainder saying that, they will go to stores, but primarily only for curbside or BOPUS. So we still think the store has an important role to play in logistics, fulfillment, employment, as well as experience. So we're encouraged that the stores will continue to evolve and adapt. So.
Cool, great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. We're absolutely honored to have you guys here. We know there's a lot going on in the world. If we go to the next slide here. Next week, we kick off the Chapter 1 of NRF. We would love to talk to you. There is the ability to do matchmaking and request time with Mike, Jeff, Anthony, and our other experts here at Oracle. We would love to speak with you and reach out. We also have the ability to do one-to-one demos if that's of interest to you. We will be going virtual with Crosstalk, which is one of our premier programs. We are recruiting customer speakers right now. You heard a lot of different examples throughout the presentation today. We'll be looking to reach out to customers that you heard about today to talk a little bit more in depth about their personal experience with technology and how that's helping them move forward. And then we're hopeful, we're optimistic that Chapter 2 will be in person in June. I personally am missing seeing everybody. I am also an extrovert like Jeff. And so one of the things that we thought was important, especially everything going on in the world right now, is to really give back. So one of the things that we're committed to doing is for every retailer that requests a meeting with us at NRF, we're going to donate to the retail ROI. For those of you that are unfamiliar with retail ROI, it is near and dear to our hearts. We are a founder of the initiative that's focused on helping vulnerable children around the world. That organization has done some wonderful things, and we're absolutely thrilled to be part of it and looking forward to connecting with you guys next week. As always, you can connect with us digitally on the rack. We are here to help. We are happy to offer advice. We have a variety of different blogs, as Jeff referred to, on the COVID offers that offer advice from our partners, from our consultants. Please feel free to tap into any of that content. And we are absolutely thrilled to be in 2021 and look forward to a great year. So thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention, and Happy New Year.